Welcome to New York's #2 sports show. The Rangers defeat the Columbus Blue Jackets 2-1 in the shootout in Columbus. So Rangers now 9-1-1 on the road. They've won 6 straight away from Madison Square Garden, and they improved to 10-7-2 overall. And it's their second 3-game winning streak of the season. So a lot of good things here. A game that the Rangers, for parts of the game, really specifically the middle portion of the game, really were the better team. But also, look, I mean, the outcomes could have went in every direction, right? Rangers could have won a regulation. Columbus could have won a regulation. Ultimately, it goes the distance to the shootout, and they get it done. Igor Shesterkin made some big saves in this game. A penalty shot actually in the first period from Miles Wood. That was a key stop. And he, fared pretty well in the shootout as well. Rangers get a couple of goals in the shootout, one by Vincent Trocheck, and then the winner by J.T. Miller. Columbus, they have some firepower. They really do. And for the Rangers to really hold them down was impressive. Again, Rangers, by and large, through 19 games, have played a pretty good defensive brand of hockey. And to make matters even more kind of impressive, and, Will Borgen, who had a long streak of consecutive games played, I believe 285, which was at least top 10, active in the NHL. I think maybe like around 7th or so. He doesn't play. And so, for him not to play, it must be something that he's struggling with. I mean, we'll see what his status is as far as the back-to-back home against Detroit. We'll discuss that one after we're done with the, Columbus game here. But that meant that Matthew Robertson would be inserted into the lineup on a third pair with Vakanainen, which you can't feel great about. But, hey, at the end of the day, they did what they had to do. They certainly got the third pair of minutes. It was a lot of Gavrikov and Fox as expected. And then, Schneider kind of slots up into the Borgen second pair right side spot with Carson Soucy on the left. And so they obviously, they played a lot. And look, I mean, divisional games are important. And look, Columbus gets a point themselves, but to go to Columbus, get the 2 points is definitely very important. The Eastern Conference, it's very, very bunched up. It really is. And, the Rangers are playing better hockey lately, but there's still a lot of work to be done. And, you see, the consistency is good. I think that the Red Wing game tomorrow, that's going to be an interesting challenge. What was interesting here was, they went with Shesterkin, which I said I wasn't totally sure. I felt as if they might go with Quick, but what it goes to show you, look, Igor has great career numbers versus Columbus. Another thing, too, is, and I don't know how much weight this holds, but it seems like in the back-to-backs, like I had said, I felt like, okay, Igor seems to maybe get the home starts, whereas Quick gets the road ones. Well, actually, I'm going to backtrack off of this statement I was about to make, because the last back-to-back, they went with Quick first and then Shesterkin. Because I was going to say, maybe in back-to-backs, Igor gets the first game, Quick the second. Not always the case. What I will say as far as the back-to-backs, this is the third one. In the first leg of the 3 back-to-backs, Rangers have won all of them. They won at Pittsburgh, then to lose home against Washington. They won at Detroit, then to lose home against the Islanders. And then they win at Columbus, and we'll see what they do home against Detroit. So if that trend continues, they might lose to the Red Wings there. But look, as far as this one goes, when the Rangers can score 2 or more goals, what is it? Like they only have that 1 overtime loss to San Jose or something crazy like that. It's a ridiculous stat. Like the magic number for the Rangers is 2. They're guaranteed at least a point. And then even then it was just, they're like not, what are they? Like 10-1 or something? Something to that effect when they score 2 or more goals. But I guess let's just jump into this one. Like I said, Will Borgen out. The forward unit stays the same. Wouldn't be surprised if, Adam Edstrom had some struggles in this game. Wouldn't shock me completely if you saw a Parsonen or Bardzinski, find their way into the lineup sooner than later. And again, it's a fluid situation, but I just wouldn't be totally stunned. I mean, look, Edstrom only played 8 minutes. Now, you could say that part of that was because Sam Carrick, gets into a fighting major, which we'll discuss. So maybe it throws things off a little bit, but still, I wouldn't be stunned, if Edstrom kind of does become more of a regular in and out of the lineup type of guy, whereas at one point he was pretty consistently in there. Also, Gabe Perreault. It was nice that they started him on that top line, but yet again, I think as early as the second period, he was moved down with Laba and Sherry, and Cooley was moved up. So Gabe Perreault, I would continue to try to stick with it. I would continue to try to have him play on that line with Zibanejad and Miller. However, early returns haven't been great. He was solid in the Nashville game, but there's a lot of work to be done here, and he may not be ready. And look, if he's sent down, then so be it. Like you're trying to do the best you can. I think part of it was the Rangers needed some offensive punch. That is the sad truth, and you don't want to fuck up Perreault's growth, but he was doing pretty well in Hartford. You combine those two things, they're giving it a chance. I think they'll continue to do that, but again, don't be stunned if Perreault continues to not provide a whole lot on that, line with Zibanejad and Miller if he does go back to Hartford. But anyway, really first 10 minutes or so of this game, very low event hockey. And I would say that Columbus definitely had the territorial edge. I wouldn't necessarily say they had the shot, like the high quality looks. Like it's not like Igor faced much, but Rangers, didn't have a whole lot of jump early, but they were doing a good job of just kind of keeping things to the outside, not giving up great opportunities. Eventually what happens in 16-19 is Taylor Radish slashes Miles Wood on a breakaway for a penalty shot. Now, what happens here is, Vakanainen, the puck kind of gets behind him. Robertson gets a little bit back, but ultimately Radish is the one who slashes Miles Wood. And, I was a little surprised that it ended up being a penalty shot. I thought the outcomes could have been, maybe nothing at all, but I'm not shocked that something was called, but it ends up working out for the Rangers. Miles Wood, who was hurt as well, right? So that doesn't hurt, like, as far as the Rangers go. And, of course, Igor Shesterkin, who is perfect in his career in penalty shots. I think 7 for 7 success rate, which is pretty impressive. And he stops Miles Wood. So, like, there not being a power play and it being a penalty shot ends up working out very well for the Rangers. And you know what? After that point, the Rangers did a very nice job. They really, really did. They, last 3 minutes of the first, and I'd say, honestly, the first half of the second, it was all Rangers. I want to say at one point, the shot count was maybe like 21-4 Rangers. It was pretty significant, but I'll say, like, in and around that, like I said, before that, certainly after that, Columbus at times, really carried the play a bit. But we go to the second period, and at 4:12, Damon Severson trips Alexis Lafreniere. It was a nice shift by the Rangers by that line, with some good, hard-determined work to cause that power play, and the Rangers do score on it. And the power play lately, it's getting better. And I think that Will Cooley being on the number one unit is helping. But it ends up being a Mika Zibanejad power play goal, his sixth goal of the season from Panarin and Fox. It's one of those things that Adam Fox just does an amazing job at the blue line. And he's been that way really his whole career, is just having the ability to keep the puck in. Like, I don't know how he does it, but he did it like 3 or 4 times in that shift. There was a play where J.T. Miller, who, for me continues, there's a lot left to be desired. We'll talk about him later on because he does get that game winner in the shootout. But he, almost turns it over, but Fox is able to continually keep the play alive. And Zibanejad just ends up in front by himself. And his initial start is stopped by Jet Greaves, the Columbus goalie. But then on his second opportunity, he is able to go up top under the crossbar and score. So Zibanejad rewarded there. Good work. And it makes it 1-0 Rangers with that goal. But then at 10:53, Vakanainen cross-checks Monahan. And I felt like that was somewhat of that ends up kind of being somewhat of a momentum shifter as things occur after that. Not as really, look, it was the right call. I felt like the officiating wasn't great in this game. I felt like Columbus got away with a decent amount. Or, like, if anything, I'd say the refs more stayed away, which I'd probably prefer that. Like, right, if it's one choice or the other, them just calling everything or nothing, I'd rather them call nothing. But I felt like Rangers probably had some power plays owed to them they didn't get. This was the right call. Vakanainen for sure cross-check Monahan. But then 20 seconds later, while Columbus has that power play, Voronkov interferes with Braden Schneider. So it's 4-on-4 for a while. And then not too far after that expires, too many men on the ice penalty on the Rangers at the 14-minute mark. And from that, Columbus does score and tie it up. So it's a matching power play goal. It's Dmitry Voronikoff's 7th goal of the season for Werenski and Marchenko, which extended Marchenko's point streak to like 10 or 11 games or something. He's a really good player. And ties it up at 1 at 15-20. And Columbus, the momentum's kind of turning in their way. And what happens is, like 37 seconds after that, you get a fight between Matthew Olivier and Sam Carrick. And Olivier is no stranger to fights. Matthew Olivier really is honestly one of the more impressive players. I believe a former Nashville Predator, and really has kind of found a home in Columbus. And a guy that, not only is providing physicality, but he's actually, really doing well as far as the score sheet's concerned too. Not in this game, but it's a fight. And Olivier really, like, maybe not in stature, but he is kind of a heavyweight in some ways in terms of the amount of fights he does get into. Like, he's known around the league. Sam Carrick, not as much, but Carrick holds his own. And you got to give Carrick credit. He does not mind fighting some of the bigger, tougher players in the league. The locker room respects it. Sam Carrick really has been just a tremendous find in his second year of a 3-year contract. A veteran, definitely one of the elder statesmen on the team. And he, gets in that fight. And I do think that, maybe as a fan, it's tougher to sort of ascertain, but I think it definitely meant a lot to his teammates for him to kind of step up like that. And look, Columbus had the better of the play. I would say, you lead the second period, and I think the Rangers were kind of at that point just lucky to get out of there 1-1. If that period continues on a little bit longer, who knows? We go to the third, and again, you get sort of a low event third period. Not to say there weren't chances on both sides, but the outcome ends up being that we go to overtime. And again, there were some opportunities for the Rangers and the Jackets, but ultimately overtime it is. The Rangers going into this were 2-2 in overtime and hadn't got to a shootout. But we do get to a shootout. Rangers' first shootout of the season. Columbus had been 2-0 coming in. It's somewhat reminiscent to last year. Now, it was like a couple months later, but Columbus had come in with a good shootout record, which makes sense when you look at some of these players they have and they're just shootout prowess. But obviously, you feel good with Igor on the Rangers side. But it ends up being where Columbus decides to shoot first. You see that for the most part. Most home teams these days decide that they want to go first. I don't mind, like, as a fan, like, getting the last licks, and it ends up working out for the Rangers. And this is how it goes down. And I'll just say this as well. What was interesting was that Mika Zibanejad was not part of the top 3. This has got to be one of the first times that I can remember where Zibanejad was in the lineup and was not part of the top 3. I don't know how far back that would go, but it stood out. But not to say that the other options weren't good and worthy. It starts out with Kent Johnson, who I believe coming in was a 6 for 11 in his career in the shootout. Igor makes the stop. Then Panarin, who historically has been great in the shootout, former Blue Jacket. Now, Panarin maybe wasn't as good last year in his opportunities, but historically has been. He doesn't score. But then Adam Fantilli is stopped, and then Vincent Trocheck breaks the ice with a goal, waited out Greaves a bit, and takes a wrist shot, blocker side, and scores. And so the Rangers have a chance to win it, but Kirill Marchenko wouldn't have that. He scores. Again, not much Igor could do. You know what? What I want to mention that I didn't earlier on the goal, I don't believe I did, on the power play goal, was that Igor, that's probably one that Igor would want to have back. Not in terms of the shot by, I believe, Werenski, I think is the one that took it. Just not a great it's not a great rebound there. It should have either been stopped clean or gone to the side, and ends up in just a great chance for Voronkov right in front. Other than that, Igor was very, very good, but just wanted to make mention that it's probably one that Shesterkin ultimately doesn't love the outcome there. Marchenko does score. Now this one, Marchenko, it's just all class and skill, so not much you can do there. But then J.T. Miller, chance to win it, gets the job done. Goes in very deliberately, very slowly, and makes a nice move. gets elevation on it, run under the crossbar, beats Greaves, and the Rangers win 2-1. So JT Miller, as much as I feel like, it's been tough to watch, he has come through in these overtimes and shootouts. Now, not so much the Shark game where he fucked up defensively, but other than that, the Oiler win where he had the winner, the Kraken game where he was involved in the Will Cooley goal, and now here. So when the moments matter most, late, right, overtime, shootout, he is delivering. And so the Rangers win 2-1. Final score. Good win for the Rangers on the road. They get it done again. And so now it'll be Rangers, Red Wings. And this one's going to be tough for a few reasons. I mentioned before just the back-to-back stuff where the previous two situations, road win to start, home loss. Not to say they played poorly in that Capital game. The Islander game was a different story. They didn't play well in that one. But since then, 3-game winning streak for the Rangers. But here's the thing with Detroit. And look, the Rangers have been successful against Detroit in the last few years. I mean, the Rangers just beat them last week. I feel as if the Rangers have been better in Detroit results-wise than home. But either way, I think that, the Rangers have beaten them for the most part in either location. But Detroit, the biggest thing that the Rangers are going to have to fend against is that Detroit blew a 4-1 lead home against Buffalo. And Detroit loses in overtime 5-4. They had a 4-1 lead late in the second. They had a 2-goal lead going into the third and ultimately only come away with 1 point again, home against the Sabres, who are, the worst team in the Eastern Conference. So you're going to get a real hungry Detroit team who also knows, again, that they just lost recently to the Rangers. So you're going to have to come out with a real strong effort. Jonathan Quick will be in goal. He's been really good this season. He was really good against the Red Wings, and let's see what he can do. Curious to see that as well. Can he continue his strong play? He doesn't play much, but when he has been, it's as if, like you wouldn't know there was any lost time in between. So we'll see. As far as Will Borgen, I'm a little skeptical, now that the streak is over. You would look, it's a back-to-back situation, and maybe that played into it, but I would guess it doesn't seem like it's a long-term thing. Will Borgen took part in warm-ups. I think that if this is a playoff situation, chances are Will Borgen would have been in there. I don't know what the injury was. It seemed like everything was normal in that Tampa game, and then clearly something was up. If you remember, the game in Toronto, Will Borgen was close to missing that one too. So clearly he's been dealing with something. Maybe it's both are unrelated, but that's something to keep an eye on. And as well as the forwards, I wouldn't be shocked if, for an example, I think Perreault, they'll keep him on that top line, but I don't know, a guy like Edstrom maybe finds his way out of the lineup tomorrow. So even though they won, we'll see what happens. And again, it'll be Jonathan Quick in goal. Let me just see for Detroit who will be in. So in for the Red Wings, typically, most goalies don't go both in the back-to-back. It was John Gibson. So yet again, it'll be a Jonathan Quick versus Cam Talbot matchup is what we're going to be looking at here. So, look, all these Eastern Conference games are big. I know it's relatively early in the season, although we're almost kind of at the quarter mark. But with the way it is against any Eastern Conference team besides, again, maybe Buffalo, not to say that Buffalo couldn't beat the Rangers, just in terms of the standings of it all, everyone else, it's extremely valuable to get that head-to-head win. So, the Rangers will hope to continue success against Detroit, build off of the home win against Nashville, right? Let's remember that as well. Rangers finally get off the schneid, but you don't want to give it right back. You want to take that narrative away. The Rangers have continued to reel off road wins, and they want to find their way back as far as the home games go. I think it will be a challenge, but certainly very winnable for the Rangers. But to me, if they can beat Detroit heading on to what'll be a pretty tough road trip, Vegas, Colorado, Utah, that'll be pretty tough. If they can beat Detroit going into that, that would probably be, for me, a high point of the season. Whenever the Rangers have maybe come close to kind of getting on a real roll, it's been kind of stunted with a bad loss. So let's see what happens here. But yeah, Igor Shesterkin gets the job done. Rangers play a really sound game overall. And they find a way to beat Columbus 2-1 in the shootout to continue their incredible road ways. 9-1-1 on the road, 6 straight, but they will head home for a back-to-back situation, and they will take on the Detroit Red Wings at Madison Square Garden.